Hello and welcome to another standard video. Today we are revisiting the monowhite lifegain deck, which had fallen out of favor recently, but now with Ninja Turtles we got a Leonardo Cutting Edge, which is maybe enough to revitalize the archetype as a 2-mana 1/1 lifelinker that gets a +1/+1 counter whenever we gain life, so your typical Ajani's Pridemate ability, but now on a lifelinker, which makes a huge difference. We already had Aerith in standard, but the difference between 2 and 3 mana is also huge for a card like this, and occasionally we can sneak Leonardo into play for just a single white mana, especially when paired with our 8 1-mana flyers, and then on turn 2 we could also sneak Leonardo in, and especially when it's also paired with a card like Hinterland Sanctifier or maybe Halia, we can immediately gain life when Leonardo enters, so it will immediately hit for 2 or 3 damage and also gain that much life, so we can get the ball rolling. And then besides Leonardo, we also have the original Ajani's Pridemate and Essence Channeler, which for the most part is an upgrade, as it can also maybe move its +1 counters onto another creature when it dies. So we've got 11 total of these 2-mana creatures that we can hopefully enable the turn they come into play with either our 8-mana Flying Lifelinkers, which are great at setting them up, as well as Hinterland Sanctifier and the one of Zora, which is just a 5th copy of Sanctifier that's slightly worse without any spiders in the deck, but these are all great at setting up our Pridemates and Leonardo. And then we also have Halia, which can also be warped for a single white mana and then kind of acts as a Hinterland Sanctifier, but can also draw us additional cards if we've gained 3 or more life at the end of our turn, and then later we can still cast it for 3 mana normally, so it can keep enabling its ability. And then 2 copies of Linden, which is another payoff for sticking to mono-white, as we can now gain life whenever a white creature attacks, which is great with all these Pridemates, since we can potentially attack with a whole bunch of creatures and get multiple separate triggers, which each will give these creatures an extra +1/+1 counter. So in a deck like this, we're looking to gain life in small increments, as opposed to gaining big chunks of life, because that will result in more +1 counters overall. And then Exemplar of Light is just a flying Pridemate that also draws additional cards, so that can also make for a nice curve topper. And then Leyline of Hope we mostly hope to have in our opening hand, so we don't have to cast it, and then it will gain us additional life each time, as well as eventually giving the team +2/+2 once we're at 27 or more life, which is not too difficult to get to even by turn 3 in this deck, so that can be another huge payoff for running this deck, since we are playing a relatively low land count, only 20 lands total, since if you include the warp on Halia, the curve is incredibly low, so we can easily operate on just 2 or 3 lands for a while. And then, of course, Sheltered by Ghosts, our main interaction, which also happens to give our creature lifelink, so it can also be very powerful when paired with an Essence Channeler or a Ajani's Pridemate. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the draw. A 1-lander is going to be tough to keep. If we were guaranteed a second land, this isn't terrible, but not going to risk it here. And then we can keep this. Maybe prefer Sanctifier over an extra lifelinking flyer in case opponent's got a flying blocker. Then we can still maybe gain some life to grow Leonardo. A red-black, so this is the discard deck. Okay, so I think I'm happy with a Healer's Hawk. And then we'll see if we can get a Leonardo going. But yeah, opponent's off to a scary start here with a flail. We'll see if they have something to bring back out of the graveyard. They do. Although the Phoenix will have to attack, so they can't keep it back on defense. But yeah, that's pretty much their ideal start, getting in for 6 on turn 2. Could have been even more if they had discarded more to the flail. I think I still like Leonardo, and then could also sneak with it, to be fair. And then I could play a Sanctifier with the plan of playing more creatures afterwards to grow Leonardo before attacking. And then play Sanctifier first, so Leonardo will immediately grow as we sneak. So we gain 2, And next turn we'll be able to make it a 5-5 at least, which can hopefully keep up with Moonshadow. Opponent discards a Bloodghast. At least won't have haste yet. But they do get it back out of the graveyard for free. And the Monument's a great curve topper here. So they can now potentially discard at will just to draw. Or make us lose life. We're gonna stick to the plan. Gonna keep the backup Leonardo in hand since they could find removal for it. Discarding the shark. And plays another one. They can make us lose life. So yeah, this is a healthy attack for 11. But they won't have a card in hand to enable monuments again right away. And no instant speed discard outlet either. And Linden was a good pickup. So, does the Sanctifier attack here is a question? Probably doesn't. And then we would get 3 more Linden triggers, making this 10 powered, so they're already forced to chump. So I guess if we value the 1 damage we could attack, but this way we keep back more blockers. Which could matter. So yeah, Leonardo is getting nice and big for us. So gotta hope to dodge removal. And then our opponent's not gonna be able to sustain this for too long. They only have 3 lands, so if they draw Cool but Rude, they can't play and level up. And they actually had a bitter triumph, but decided against it. Okay, going for ET. Can maybe trample the Moonshadow, but I guess they're out of cards in hand, so... Yeah, that's a desperation attack. We can maybe block Bloodghast with Linden and then get them on the way back. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a keepable hand. Hawk into a Leonardo or Channeler. Got some removal. So we'll see what our opponent's up to. Turn 1 planes. And no play. Still mono white. Is it lifegain? There's also a mono white Momo Flyers deck that's been picking up in popularity. Alright, it's just the Aura deck. So we're used to that one. Shelter by Ghosts, not a bad way to get rid of the token, because their opponent could also return the favor, of course. They can trade for the Hawk. Maybe we're okay with that and just go Leonardo attack, see if they want to trade. Or maybe better Essence Channeler if we're planning to Sheltered by Ghosts soon. We can give the Channeler a lifelink. And the sneak ability could come in handy. They could take the trade and then seam rip the Channeler, which would be a good answer to it. But yeah, we might be able to sneak Leonardo for 1 mana. They did have the seam rip, as it turns out. And another one. Alright, so now I can Sheltered by Ghosts. And we even drew another one. Play another channeler then. I could Shelter by Ghost to Seam Rip if we're worried about Shard Mage's Rescue. Feather of Flight I don't mind seeing. But they do have a mana up now. And Ethereal Armor. Alright, so now Shelter by Ghost is going to be a blowout. Although this is an attack for 16, so it's no joke. But opponent's going to be out of threats. No sneaking this time. Aerialist has some built-in protection. And a Scavenger. So now what? Could go for another Shelter by Ghosts, pay the ward from Aerialists. Yeah, I think that makes sense. It also makes it harder for the opponent to remove Channeler going forward. So this is kind of the aura playstyle that we're imposing upon our opponents. They could still Shelter by Ghosts on one of the auras as opposed to the creature, but that's only a temporary solution. Another Scavenger into Seam Rip, so they're gonna get rid of Sheltered by Ghosts then. They have one card left in hand. So we'll see if it's an aura or some other enchantment. Ooh, they got rid of the wrong Sheltered by Ghosts. Probably wanted to get the one with Aerialist underneath. Yeah, that is going to make a difference. So they could still have Shard Mage's Rescue, which could grow this up to a 5/5. Although I could Shelter, get back Essence Channeler, which is not a bad play, because then if they do set up a trade, at least we would get to move the counters. So I don't hate it. Although it doesn't appear that they have anything. So I guess I can first get rid of the Seam Rip, get another Sheltered by Ghost back to make their Ethereal Armor worse. And then play Leonardo and then attack. So now they have to pay 6 mana for the privilege of targeting our Channeler. But they might once again just go for Sheltered by Ghost itself. By exiling the Seam Rip, we did give them the extra opportunity to trigger Eerie on the Scavenger, so there was a drawback to doing so. Opponent just getting rid of Leonardo. Feels like they should have gotten rid of the Sheltered, which had a Seam Rip underneath first. Which could have exiled another Sheltered by Ghosts, which could have unlocked another Seam Rip. So it would have been a cascading effect. So it feels like they lost out on an opportunity there. I could play the Leyline, or just go Sanctifier into Bat. Grow both Channelers. And then the smaller Channeler probably wants to attack. Offer the trade for Scavenger. It's a forced block. Opponent decides to chump. So yeah, we'll see if they can top deck their way out of this. Spellbook Vendor is probably not going to cut it. Opponent does attack, which opens up an attack with a Channeler. And then Leyline's gotta be better than playing another bat, even though it grows my channelers before damage. This is also a forced chump, but I might want the extra blocker back for their scavenger, you never know. Helpful Weaver. One more counter. Alright, so this ended up being a pretty grindy game. Don't think they can afford to attack again. But I'm happy to take it. And then now we can activate the Air Temple as well. Yeah, had they handled those Sheltered by Ghosts on Seam Rip a bit differently, it's possible they could have turned the game around. They still get one draw step. Next turn they get double strike, so I guess there's still hope for them. And they actually drew the last Seam Rip. So we'll see what happens here. Probably get back your other Seam Rips, grow Scavenger some more. Yep. Yeah, drawing all 4 Seam Rips is pretty good in this matchup. And Aerialist is back. So we no longer have lifelink. But we're now happy to trade for Scavengers since there's no real consequences. If they attack, they go to 15, but then yeah, they would die on the way back, so now we can kind of force the trades, which will benefit us since we still get the buff from Leyline. They want to attack with Sanctifier because then they can gain 12 for free. Yeah, this is fine. I mean, if they have to block with a Scavenger, they're not coming back. But I could maybe do the math to see if Sanctifier can get in there too. If they gain 12 and Chump, they would still take 16. So yeah, I guess Sanctifier could have gotten in there as well. So they're not dead, but yeah, they're also not winning here. Alright, and there we have it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have a decent hand. Zora into Leonardo is the plan. And then I wouldn't mind a third land. Swamp Grimbobble is gonna answer our 1-drop sadly. Still gonna play Leonardo so that if we don't draw lands, Leonardo can enable the channeler technically. And Moonshadow is next. And another removal spell. Alright, so not the start we were hoping for. I think we'll Essence Channeler with a plan of maybe using Sheltered by Ghosts. And Corpses of the Lost. So we can exile the token perhaps, so it won't be coming back. And then have a bit of built-in protection with the ward. They could have another Bauble or Hex and pay the ward. But once we get another creature down, we at least would get to move the +1 counters. Alright, opponent's got the better triumph, even discarding a Bloodghast. So yeah, 3 removal spells so far. But our opponent is running out of cards in hand at least, although they will pick up the corpses. So this turn I like Sanctifier, Halia, Healer's Hawk, and then we'll get to draw a card end of turn. And then we still have a Sheltered by Ghosts, maybe going for corpses itself, or once again the token. And our life total still looking good, so we have time to draw out of it. Opponent sacking the Bauble, so I guess just replaying corpses wasn't good enough. Moonshadow is getting large, but Sheltered by Ghost could also reset it. And the Timeline Color is next. Take 6. A Leyline will have to wait. This turn Halia and attack. We'll have gain 3, so we get to draw again. So we are slowly pulling ahead. Forsaken Miner also has haste from the corpses, so yeah, that is an attack for 10 now. But land is useful. So we could go Essence Channeler plus Sheltered by Ghosts. And put it on Halia, which they cannot Requiting Hex. And now question is what to exile. It's either the token or the Moonshadow, I think, as opposed to corpses itself. They won't have an easy time removing Halia, so I think we go for Moonshadow. Channeler grows some more, so that can now profitably block. So yeah, we had a good back and forth. Opponent drew a healthy amount of removal. But yeah, we had enough life gain to sustain ourselves, and then the card draw from Halia to pull ahead. So with no cards in hand, we should be safe. And our opponent scoops it up. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a nice hand. Turn 1 Hawk, turn 2 either Channeler or Pridemate. And then I wouldn't mind a third land, so we can Warp Halia, play another 2-drop. And keep the ball rolling. Opponent black-green. I'll go for a Channeler. At least if they remove it, we'll get to move the +1 counter. Make that Sultai. And yep, Harvester takes out Channeler, so it might be Sultai Reanimator. Leonardo's interesting. I could sneak it. So how would my sequencing look like? Warp Halia, sneak in Leonardo, so it's immediately a 2-2, and then grows up to a 3-3. And then I would get to draw a card end of turn, versus I could just play a 2-drop on attack, or sneak and replay the Hawk, but might as well just cast Leonardo at that point. I think we do want to try to draw a card here, even if it means giving up on the Hawk with the extra counter. It's not like the Reanimator deck is gonna present some big blocker where I need the evasion from Hawk to attack past it. And yep, there's a speaker. So that can actually block a Leonardo here if they want. discarding a land at least, so their graveyard's not very full, but they did just grab Bringer, which they can maybe discard with another speaker. A land is helpful. So, could play Halia, grow Leonardo, and then attack for 4. Seems better here. Even though I would have liked to get some more Pridemates in play. Alright, so at least the lands are coming. So we'll see if we can afford to play more threats out or if we need to hold back. Wistfulness can draw this card, get rid of the Bringer. And then they probably already have a Kivero in hand, ready to go. Alright, opponent passes. Possible they're hanging on to Bitter Triumph, which can discard one more card. And then if I play Channeler, I can put some counters on it, so that at least if they do Kivero me next turn, I get to move those +1 counters onto the creatures I get back out of the graveyard. Yeah, maybe we go Channeler, Double Hawk, and then if they don't have Kivero, at least we're putting pressure on them. Definitely won't be a lethal attack. And looks like they had the Bitter Triumph as well. Alright, discarding a land at least, so... I'm guessing they do have Kivero in hand, but they just don't have a graveyard to win the game on the spot. Although it's still gonna leave us in a pretty bad situation. So I probably need to just enable Halia to draw another card and hope for the best. At least now if they do Kivero, we do get Leonardo and Channeler back. Although they will get swept up by the Harvester, I guess, so... Not incredibly helpful, unless, of course, now we get 3 +1 counters. So I get to save probably Leonardo. Although Channeler I can Sheltered by Ghosts. So that might actually be more beneficial. Alright, so as the dust settles, opponent picked up a Overlord as well. So this might be... just play Pridemates, hope they set up an aggressive attack, and we get to punish them with Sheltered by Ghosts next turn. As opposed to trying to force the issue with Sheltered by Ghosts right now. Overlord goes digging, mills another Bringer, Terror, and Wistfulness, and they're happy to keep those in the graveyard. So they're maybe going to set up another Kivero soon. Getting in for 10 in the air. They do have one card in hand still. Exemplar would be better if we had a way to enable it. I think this is double Sheltered by Ghosts. Try and get a good attack in. Can clear Harvester and Wistfulness. But yeah, if they have another Kivero left, this is gonna get ugly. No speaker chump. It does. With a land we could also activate the Air Temple. Is it another Bitter Triumph, perhaps? A Day of Black Sun. That's a pretty unusual card for the deck to be running. But yeah, it's incredibly effective here. So probably not getting out of this mess. All-out attack would be hitting us for 12 plus 9 is not quite lethal at least. So I can take it. And another Kivero. We'll get back Terror of the Peaks. Alright, not a whole lot we could have done differently, sadly. We do get a bunch of Halia triggers, but probably won't be enough to survive. But yeah, this also kind of shows the messiness of playing more board wipes in your Reanimator decks. And does allow the opponent to get their stuff back, which is why you usually don't see them. Still fun to see all the triggers go off. But the opponent's got 14 damage on the stack. And that's going to be enough to just take us out here. So yeah, maybe chumping with the Healer's Hawk could have saved me, actually. But I don't know if we should have necessarily put them on having another Kivero in hand there. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a decent hand. Turn 1, Zora or Sanctifier. Sanctifier maybe has an easier time attacking into an opposing 1-drop to enable Sneak. And yep, turn 1 Llanowar Elves. So in that case, I think we go Zora, attack, sneak in Leonardo. And Leonardo will immediately grow. But yeah, if our opponent follows up with turn 2 Badger Molkup, for instance, we're gonna be in serious trouble if we don't draw a Sheltered by Ghosts. Because the green decks can certainly go over the top, even if we do have some powerful synergies here. Opponent actually an airbending deck, so this should also be a pretty poor matchup, although we did draw Sheltered by Ghosts. So Dock is a problem once they start airbending. It's not necessarily a problem in and of itself. So maybe we wait on Sheltered by Ghosts for a bit longer. And then we can go Sanctifier into Pridemate. Present 2 big threats. And try to ride them to victory. And then the Leyline could be a good draw to pump the team. Any of our card draw creatures. Opponent's down to 10 already. But Aang could maybe airbend Leonardo to reset it. If they pass with 4 mana up, they probably have Appa, which can airbend their own stuff as well. I could try Sheltered by Ghosts on Dock, enchanting one of our 1-drops, in case they do have Aang to bounce our creature. Then I can still replay it. And if they choose to Appa, I can Shelter by Ghosts again. And they're already kind of forced to chump anyway. So I do like being aggressive here. So we'll try this first. Could also target the elves, which would force them to cast Appa, although they can still float mana. I think we get rid of Dock. Yeah, there's Appa. So they can airbend it. And then they still die. Not a whole lot they could have done about it. We were on the play with a great draw. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a ley line and a decent curve. Wouldn't mind drawing another 1-drop. So we can maybe sneak Leonardo. Well, I guess we can always sneak it and replay the Hawk, I guess. But something like a Sanctifier could have been nice. Untapped Overgrown Tomb, so whatever we play is getting hexed. But we can play Leonardo and hopefully have it survive. Alright, black-green +1 counters, sort of. Yeah, I mean, Leonardo may not have an easy time attacking into Michelangelo, so maybe we prefer Pridemate for now, with the plan of putting a Shelter by Ghosts on it. Or if we draw third land to Linden, can also maybe enable it. Alright, Banter Mole makes sense. Get an extra counter on the land. Can still use the mutagen. But if that's it, we can probably go over the top once we assemble enough of our life gain synergies. And Sheltered by Ghosts isn't a bad use of our mana either. Do we expect him to have something like an Ouroboros that I might have to shelter instead? Yeah, the problem is we're not gaining any life right now. But maybe that's okay, can take a hit for now. Play a Channeler or a Leonardo and hope to get there with Linden next turn. Yeah, let's just play defense. Ascension is still beatable. Take 6. So Linden would be pretty awesome here. Alright, I guess we need to Sheltered by Ghosts instead. Cub threatens a lot of mana, so seems like the target also just helps us clear a path. And yeah, there's Ouroboros, so I was right in waiting. Now we get to do it again. Although we don't have any amazing attacks either. So playing Channeler earlier could have worked out better, since we ended up using both Sheltered. Do I put another one on the Pridemate is a question. I think it makes sense, just make it harder for them to get their stuff back. As I need to pay Ward 4 now. And definitely don't want to attack. Although actually, I probably could have attacked. Because of Leyline, we would have gotten the +2 before the Pridemate would have died. Although we might be able to set that up on defense as well if they're not careful. Opponent's not gonna fall for it. Still no third land for Linden. Because yeah, now if the Pridemate attacks, our opponent can double block, and then the +2/+2 is not enough. So it's probably just Channeler, pass, and then hope to draw land for Linden, and then at least Leonardo and Channeler can get busy. Yeah, that missed attack is going to make a pretty big difference, because we could have handed a +2 bonus, triggered Pridemate and Leonardo a bunch. So this is potentially a mistake on their part, because now I could double block, gain 9 + 2 is 11, so we enable the ley line, and they don't get to take anything out unless they've got instant speed removal. Then this is a blowout. Alright, so we got to pull off the leyline trick after all. They do also get to re-trigger Earthbender Ascension, but yeah, I don't think this was intentional. Sweet, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw with a leyline, lots of Sanctifiers and Halia. So we can quickly get to 27 life, draw some cards. Opponent on Lessons, presumably. So they might have some cheap burn spells to slow us down, or even a way to bounce the ley line. Talent is fine for now. Gran attacks just to loot. Getting rid of Wisdom, so they probably have more in hand. Okay, so Halia into Sanctifier. The order doesn't matter. And then wait on Sheltered by Ghosts. Even though it's tempting to go for it now already. And then I think I'm okay attacking. Yeah, it's a close call. Maybe I do keep the extra blocker back for now. So they can't bounce Sanctifier and get a free attack in with Gran. Although they could also bounce the ley line and then still deal with the Sanctifier. But yeah, Demonstration dealing 4. And no attacks. And now Halia would gain 4 essentially. Prefer that over Linden, I think. And as a 5/5, even with a combustion technique, that wouldn't be enough. They would need another lesson as well, which I guess is still possible. Yeah, I guess I'll still play it more conservatively here. But next turn we can put some pressure on them. Talents leveled up, so now Sheltered by Ghosts looks even better. And this could just be lights out. Opponent takes it. Could have once again considered leaving Sanctifier back, so Bounce Spell on Channeler doesn't enable a sequence of discounted spells. Opponent had the basics, as it turns out, but yeah, even if they pay the wards, they're still pretty far behind. They can bounce the ley line. But yeah, that'll do it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a fine hand. Got some 1-mana enablers, some 2-mana payoffs. With the third land, we get to curve out perfectly. And then probably start with a Ruin Lurker Bat. More likely to get damage in while gaining a life. Sanctifier is better at gaining a life once the board stalls out a bit. And if we draw Leonardo, it's also better to sneak in using the bat while controlling a Sanctifier, so Leonardo can immediately grow before dealing damage. Opponent on the Aura deck. Alright, we do not have any removal, so that could be a bit of an issue. I think I still gotta play a 2-drop, even though our opponent's most likely gonna get rid of it. It's just gonna be too inefficient if I draw third land and cannot double spell. Aerialist is fine for now. And then we can offer the trade, play another Pridemate, I guess. Aerialist does not have reach until it gets modified. Or flying, I should say. Alright, so is it time for Sheltered by Ghosts? It is. So now we can consider SS Channeler. Bonus seems to have a Shard Mage's Rescue in hand. So if they have something like Ethereal Armor, it's going to be really difficult to outrace the Aerialist. But we have a bunch of 1-drops now, so we can grow Channeler and Pridemate even before attacking. Aerialist is fine. Pretty redundant here. Take 3. And draw our own Sheltered, which would have to go after their enchantments. How does that play out? They could have double Shard Mage's Rescue, make this a 4/4. Or just 1 and then double block a Pridemate. I might still be better off just playing Sanctifier into Healer's Hawk for a turn cycle. Or maybe Sanctifier into Zora. I think I still like the Hawk. Although we'd have to watch out for Aerialist ambushing my Ruin Lurker bait. So it's possible I don't actually attack with it here. Could technically threaten to double block the Aerialist as well. Because yeah, they could have ambushed my Flyer. If they trade for Channeler, we're fine with it. Can put the counters on a Lifelinker. Feather of Flight. So they had a different way of maybe ambushing the Flyer, even with a Keep Guard. Trade happens. And then I do not need another bat. I'll take a Lanes. Halia could be decent. If they were to attack with Aerialists, I could even consider double blocking to play around double Shard Mage's Rescue. Enduring Innocence is not a card you often see in these decks. So yeah, I don't even know if they can afford to attack. For 1 mana, I mean, I may as well double block. I don't think there's anything I'm playing around other than Shard Mage's Rescue. Although you never know, they are on a pretty unusual build. But this way I just gain an extra life as opposed to just blocking with the Hawk. Alright, Shard Mage's Rescue, so yeah, that's fine. We still trade. And get our Pridemate back, immediately trigger Sanctifier. And this could be a decent spot for a Sheltered by Ghosts. And our opponent's gonna scoop it up, I'll take it. So yeah, this mono-white lifegain deck may not be the best deck in Standard, but in Best of 1 it can certainly hold its own, and it's just very consistent at presenting a fast clock, so the games tend to be over pretty quickly. It's got a bit of card draw, it's got a bit of removal, so it's got most of the angles covered, so unless your opponent's got a perfect draw, at least you have a chance in every matchup. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.